There we go. All right.
You're recording, yeah.
Well, Chris, so you're going to give us a history of the Perkins Cove Bridge. And would you like to share your screen and start?
Okay. Does everybody see this?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
That looks good.
Okay, I'm going to give you a lot of information about the Perkins Cove Bridge and the channel, and try and explain some things that have come to me as I've been studying this. But I would like, if I say something that isn't right, or if you got some more information that I don't have, please put it in, as David is recording this, and so we'll get it all together in one package one day. So anyway, this picture that I've got here is of the very first bridge, which was built across the Josias River by Moses Lyman Staples in about 1895, as far as I can tell. Now look at this thing. It's just about a minimum of sticks and boards, and he put it there so that his hotel guests could get over to the cove and talk to the fishermen. And would you like to walk across this with your long skirt on and hardly any rails to hold on to? Well, they did it. Look in the background here. This is Israel's head in the distance. It's hardly any houses there. And this, I hope you can see my arrow. These shoals are covered with salt hay.
Is that a sailboat?
Yes. The salt hay was something that Joel Perkins liked very much. He had built a road down onto this marsh, and he cut the hay every year. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now this is basically the same bridge, but if you look closely, it's been beefed up. The beams underneath are much bigger. The rails a little bit higher. And guess what? That's my father at the age of 9 or 10, and he's fooling around with something that's down here. He's trying to pull it up with a string. He's having a good time. So that's the same bridge. Let's go on to the next. This is the same bridge as we saw in the first picture, but it's from the other side. Look at how the channel kind of comes around, and on this side is the cove side, and all these doors were built by William Henry Perkins. Okay, behind here is Ma Perkins' house, which she called the Perkins Cove House, and that name has been attached to the Perkins Cove from then on. She had she had rooming guests going all the way into the 1800s. Her husband was lost at sea, and she started making her living by renting rooms. Here's the channel in a later time. Now notice no dredging has been done. The high tide comes all the way up in here, but that's not so good. The fishermen could bring their boats in here, but when the tide went out, they couldn't move them. This is after the 1800s, when they started being able to afford engines in their boats. They didn't have to sail them anymore, and they didn't use dories. So they were getting very upset about how the situation, and they needed the cove to be dredged, or the channel to be dredged. Now here's a little bit later bridge, about 20 years later. They got tired of the ice that came down the river in the winter, taking out the stanchions. So they put in concrete piles and built a much more substantial bridge across. Notice that there's a truss, the attempt at a truss here. And also notice there's a stairway here. Well, see this bunch of stuff here? This is what holds the bank back. And at high tide, they can get their boats in here and let them dry out when the tide goes out and work on them. And we can still see the marsh. It's a little bit easier to see in this picture. But lo and behold, people are starting to build houses up on Israel's head.
Is that the Christmas shop?
And that's the Christmas shop, which is still there.
Chris, what date do you put on that? Because those are the first big summer homes up there, and there's that Christmas shop, which I don't know what it was built for originally.
Yeah, I'd say I'm no authority on this because I don't know who took this picture or when they did it, but I would say 1918, maybe 1920. Let's go on to the next. This is the same bridge looking the other direction. Now here's why I say 1920. This is the Charles Woodbury studio in the background, and it has the residence addition put on it, which was Charles built that for Mrs. Perkins. Mrs. Elizabeth Perkins was his assistant after Marcia died. She collaborated with him on a great many things and had contacts in Boston that were valuable to Charles and so on. Anyway, notice that the shingles on the addition are very light. Well, that indicates that it's pretty new. And this was put on in about 1924. So we're looking at a bridge in the 20s, which was high enough for the boats to get under.
But it didn't open.
But it didn't lift up, and no dredging had been done to this at this point. Here we go with the very first dredging was done by a steam shovel, which is what this is. And there's my brother sitting there watching them operate. And the first thing they found when they dug the channel out was they had to put the stuff somewhere. And that's the reason we are looking at, here's the other one of the same, the Adams house is up there, which had been revised by Hamilton Easter Field. So it's in the 1918 region. Now here's the interesting picture of the river at a fairly low tide. Here's the Perkins Maxwell Lobster Shack. And here's the ladies that have come across the bridge from the Riverside Hotel, and they're having a good time talking to these guys. But look, this building is up on stilts, and a great many of the others are, because on rare occasions, the tide comes up to this far. So that's a good reason why they had to bank the, what we have now is a steel bulkhead all along here, which is holding all the dredging that they did early on. It's holding it back and raising the level of all the area in the cove. Originally it was quite low, and this bank here is very shallow slope, because the river hasn't been dredged and none of the fill has been put up there.
Chris?
Yes.
So to the left of the shack is this building owned by, I believe it was Blanche Staples, someone could correct me, which is today Swamp John's. A story was added onto it, but that's the original building that Swamp John's is in right now, I think.
Yeah,
yes, it would be. And the other thing is that way over to the right, kind of where Frank Multis's steakhouse would be, and where there's that shallow on the Orweed Cove side. The water, I understand, used to wash right through there, and I don't know if they've added those stones to keep the water from rushing through and washing out the road up to the island or not, but It looks
Oh,
like they
yeah.
put in a road and a little to keep the storm waves from washing through there, because the island was an island at one point, and
Yeah,
it got,
you're absolutely right.
yeah, and that got filled in enough so they could have the boat yard up there. And well, that's
You can't see it because the pictures are in the way.
oh,
Well,
See
yeah.
there, it shows it.
yeah,
Yeah,
It shows
this-
what you're talking about.
yeah. You
this
can
was
move
the,
the pictures
we
to the
called
side.
It was called the causeway. They were able to get up onto the island with a vehicle at any tide. They filled it in, so blocked off the Orweed Cove from washing across. So that's
A wonderful
the
picture.
state of affairs, which the fishermen didn't like because they couldn't leave their boats up here. They dry out in low tide. So
We still have it.
that's why they had to go to a more serious event. Here's the first trestle bridge. It's a little bit hard to see, but
Oh,
this is a trestle, the standard
railroad trestle.
railroad style trestle, put up on very much higher concrete piers. I think I got a better picture there. See, these are much higher. They're up level with the riverside lawn there that came across, and the very nicely made ramp, and the ladies didn't have to worry about falling off. And
Would you go back to the other picture? Can you do that?
yeah.
Yeah,
Is-
and Chris,
that's-
make it go full screen again, or make it bigger. Go
Yeah,
up
that's
there,
fine.
up in the corner next to your X, and make
There's
the.
the brush and needle got in there in that time. See it?
Yeah, okay. She's pointing out the brush and needle has been put in. Is this the too small? I mean, this is,
No, go up to the top where it says first trestle. Go see where you have your line and the square and the X on the right hand side. Yeah, make it bigger, right there. Yes, there you go.
okay. All right. Now you can see the brush and needle, and behind it, the whistling oyster. But here the poor guys have put their boats in here, and they're not going to be able to move them when the tide goes out, because the channel isn't deep enough to allow low tide to come in. And that was one of the big motivations for building the bridge in the first place. And we're approaching the 1940s when the Corps of Engineers got interested in this, and they proposed, and it takes them several years to draw up a proposal that gets approved by the Corps of Engineers hierarchy. And so by 1938, they were all over the cove looking at where they were going to put this bridge. And here's the channel, which has been dredged, and in order to get across the thing now that it's so large, they had to put a much bigger bridge. And this is the first mobile bridge, they call it, Biscuit Bridge, with two sections that lift up. And up here in the top of the tower is a winch, which they can operate by hand and with a crank, and raise the two sides up. They have to have two people do this. But it will allow a boat with a tall mast to come through. Then the fishermen started getting very excited because they could bring a bigger boat through there. Let's see, the date on this one is
Is this one right?
1930s,
30s you have.
first trestle. 1930s, yeah, okay. This had to be a ways before 1940, so I'm calling it 1930s. But see how skinny it is. The pilings are very thin, and there are only a few of them. So what happened was they redesigned it, and this is what has gone on ever since the lift bridges were started. Every time they had a little problem with it, they rebuilt it. This one has electric winches on it, and they can raise both spans at the same time. But you don't see in the cove, well, yes, you do see in the cove. Here's a sailboat, probably John Lambert's
Downeaster.
friendship sloop. This is a much later photograph of the same vintage bridge. Now we're getting ready for, now we've had the Corps of Engineers in here, they dredged out the cove, and all of a sudden there has to be inspections every year. Somebody of official appointment has to come in and inspect the bridge because it's a public access, and it has to be maintained in a safe manner. So every time the inspector came through, he said, you got to fix this, you got to fix that. And so they kept adding pilings and adding timbers, whatever was wrong. And meanwhile, the town started building wharfs, docks, and the lobstermen were very happy about all this. This is the same bridge, happened to be a drawing that my grandfather on the other side, Louis H. Ryle, was an illustrator for the Boston Globe. He was fascinated with this structure, and he put this drawing, he did this drawing, and it showed that they have added a stanchion in here, a section, to hold up this long span of walkway that approached the operating bridge.
What's the foundation made of under the water?
Well, the pilings are all driven into the mud.
Uh-huh.
And this is after the first dredging, 1940, and the bridge was modified in 44 because the ice was bothering these pilings in the wintertime. And you know, this one, you see they have no protection on the pilings. So they started driving pilings on the up current side of the bridge so that they could block or break up the ice before it hit the bridge. Okay, here's some more. This I think is interesting. This is a drawing of the original bridge, and it shows the water levels. The mean high water is 16 feet below the bottom of the bridge. The mean low water is leaves only 6 feet of water to the bottom of the channel.
Oh.
Now, here's a problem. The pilings have to be driven down onto the ledge, which is 10 feet as an average, 10 feet below the bottom of the channel. If you need more water for the boats to get through, you're going to have to dredge this deeper, which takes away the support of the stanchions of the bridge. And this is where we ran into big trouble with Harry Horning, who was the harbor master at some point. And he would go away in the winter or the fall to go hunting. He'd nail the parts of the bridge up so that nobody could get across. And that made the locals very mad. And he would just go off hunting, and that was that was it. You couldn't do anything about it. So a movement began, and people started advising the town manager that this is not a good situation. But here we are with the need for a redesigned bridge. And there was a faction in town that wanted to tear the whole thing down and put up a new bridge that was wheelchair accessible, used government money, $1,200,000 was what the cost was. And another faction in town was arguing against that, wanted to keep the original bridge. Isabel Luando started in an effort to designate the bridge or get the bridge designated as a historically significant structure. And she did achieve that. And so it is one of two items on the Historic Preservation Committee's report on what is historically significant in Ogunquit, and the bridge is one of the items.
What's the other one?
And the other one is the Wynn House. That's all there is on the list at the moment. So a redesign was necessary because a good strong wind could blow this bridge over, because it doesn't have a good enough grip in the mud down under these columns, around these columns. So a proposal was made, and it was finally accepted that, I'll come back to that, that this is what we had to do to keep this bridge in place. These are concrete slabs that are poured on top of this structure here. This is, you can see it better on this side. I hope you can see my arrow point.
Sure.
Those concrete slabs add enough weight to this column arrangement here to keep the bridge solid and down on the bedrock. This revision was done in 2001. And another reason for doing it was to enclose the machinery that raises the bridge. Now on this bridge design, the bridge mechanism is hydraulic. The spans, each one pivots on a point at the top of this enclosure. And so the reason for the enclosure is to protect the sensitive equipment, the machinery of the span pivot point, or pivot bearing, to keep it away from the weather. And the other reason, of course, is the slab. So that's what the whole design change was.
And what about those other things that have to do with the ice?
This is an earlier picture which shows what they were doing as they were making it ready to pour the concrete slabs on top of the columns down here. Here you can see steel clamps on each piling so that the concrete could lock onto the columns, the pilings, and provide weight to force the pilings down onto the ledge. Meanwhile, people could get across the bridge. They put a special temporary trestle across. We weren't here at that time, but I guess somebody must remember that they could still get across the bridge while they were working down here. Oh, you had something that.
What are those things?
What?
This thing.
Oh, these are ice deflectors.
Yeah.
It's a triangle, so if the ice gets diverted from one side to the other as it tries to get out with the tide. And here's a point, now that we have global warming, we don't have such a bad time with ice. So the bridge survival is being improved by global warming. That's maybe a good thing to say about global warming. Nobody's saying anything. Is there any questions or comments?
Nope.
Well,
Keep going.
I hope you're all still there. Okay, in 2017, it was discovered that one piling in the cove side of the bridge was rotten, was split in half, and it was a major problem with the bridge because as the span on that side was lifted up, the whole thing would move sideways. Things were not very good. So they quickly did a design change. They had to cut the concrete around the piling, pull the old one out, and get another one. This is a new one that's going in. And it goes right down through that notch in the concrete, all the way to the bottom, and then it was driven in until it hit the ledge, and then they cut it off And it was one of 3 pilings that support the pivot board, which is a 12 by 12 piece of timber on which the bearings for the pivot bearings for the span are mounted. And that is in there. It has been very successful. The bridge is very stable. It doesn't move when you raise the span. They say that it should be done on this side also, but so far they haven't decided to do it.
Chris, is the whole bridge listing to the left, and or is that the photograph?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the photograph.
Okay, I can't
I
remember it
took
listing
these
like.
photographs. I have a whole bunch of them that to record this event, but this is the only, you don't need to see all of them. It's the best thing that's happened to this particular design to keep the bridge from rocking back and forth when the span goes up, because you get terrible things can happen when the bridge and the 2 spans, which are independent, come down together. They don't want to fight. They want to fit together nicely, and they still do.
Well, that was the sentence that I wouldn't let my granddaughter walk across
Yeah.
that bridge.
Well, it was back before they did this.
What's this picture?
This is just sort of an added picture. This is an older version of the bridge. And who you suppose is coming in from Foggy Sea is Billy Tower. This is
In the bow?
there was
Point to him.
in the 60s. There were a lot of these boats in the harbor, and it was really hard on the lesser fishermen, because they were crowded out by these. About 6 of these boats were in there during the fishing season. So that's the last picture I have, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, let's head back to the beginning, and now let's open up the microphones and. And-
They haven't been able to say anything.
No?
Oh,
Was it
well,
wonder
a
that.
lot of people muted themselves. But
Okay.
I'll ask them to unmute, and
That's why they didn't have questions. You couldn't hear them.
well, they could have raised their hand. Well, maybe people don't know how to do it.
Yeah, right. That's-
Let's see.
Well, the other possibility is that they didn't think it was very interesting.
That is not true.
Okay.
Thank you, Marcia.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, I had a question about the second piece. Well, first about, there's no trees here, and by the 40s or the 20s, the trees are starting to grow up.
Exactly.
And
Another benefit of global warming.
oh, boy, you've already pointed out those benefits there. Maybe it's the third one what's the one with the Woodbury studio in the back? Well, here, you can go back one, right? Go back. One more. Now, here's my question. So you see the Perkins Cove house.
More Perkins house, yeah.
Yeah, and you told me that she just every year would just add on a little more, and that's why it's all these odd buildings. Now, my question is about this place that's right close to the water, and
This one.
yeah. Now you see in the back that there's there may be some windows built in, but in an improved picture, a little later along, somebody's put in a north window, so they have changed that barn into an artist studio.
Yes, that's right.
And when I was, I don't know, when I was a kid, maybe 6 or 8 years old, Edward Betts stayed there.
Oh, minute apiece.
No,
Minute
this isn't the
Apiece-
Minute Apiece.
No, Minute Apiece would have been built later and across there.
It was over to the left. It was off the
That's
picture.
where Ann Carlton stayed. And it was a place where they used to broker fish
Oh,
in that building. And also Jonathan Borowski's parents lived there, Fran and Sid. And also Bernard Carfield actually painted some paintings from that building.
okay. I thought so. And so, and I just remember Edward Betts, his son, gosh, what was the son's name?
Peter.
Peter Betts.
Peter.
Well, there was the younger one. Peter was older. John John Betts was my age, and so John would be 64 or so today. And so I remember going in there, and I don't remember much in the way of, well, interior decoration there. I mean, I think it was open stud. It must have been pretty cold there in late August, but so
And Dick Pear bought that property, and he knocked it down and built 4 condominiums, and then later on it was turned into 2.
Yes.
And there's 2 condominiums there today. And also Dick Pear is the same person that bought the Island House, and then built houses on that property.
oh yes, okay.
Well, there's another thing that's interesting about this studio building. I remember on the south side of the building, up on the roof, or maybe it was just a porch, but there was a solar collector. Hot water ran through those pipes, and it was heated by the sun. That's the first solar collector I think I ever saw.
Huh. Now, a later picture has that building in it again, and you can see a T-shaped north-facing window. So if you could advance,
Yeah.
there it is right there. You see? And so you would place that in the early 20s, the same time
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
okay.
I don't know. The building
The studio.
definitely precedes the work that was done on the studio.
Yeah.
And there's the Minute of Peace.
Ah, there's that. Okay, who built the Minute of Peace?
It was Evan Ramsdell's fish house,
Okay, all right.
and they're related to the Hutchins, Tommy Hutchins,
Yeah,
Hutchins Garage.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go back one, Peter? I mean, I'm Chris. Sorry, I've always confused these boys.
Yeah. Well, how far you want to go back?
Oh, I think actually advance it. I missed that. Oh, go back one. Okay, so given the date, we don't know how old that car is. That could be 4 or 5 years old, or it could be the latest model.
Yeah, it's a Model T. That's not a Model T. It's a Model A vintage. It looks more like a Packard or a Buick, but than a Ford. But I ain't no expert on these old cars.
Neither am I. Okay, and there's 2 styles of lobster traps when I was growing up. One, the rounded kind, and the square. And is that there's a square one, right? I don't know.
What's this?
A square lobster trap right there.
Oh,
But where's the round one?
well,
Somebody-
Some guys preferred the round and some the square. I have to ask a
Yeah.
lobsterman. And
Well, they don't stack as well.
no. Well, feel free to jump in, anybody who has any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, an engineering question.
uh-oh.
On one of the later bridges, when the concrete slab was added, why didn't that pull down the whole structure
Hmm.
and not just the piling?
Well, the whole thing is connected together. The slab is on top of the pilings, but the pilings pass through and support the upper part of the bridge.
Yeah,
So the
but,
whole thing is one structure.
yeah, but why didn't it all go down together when that weight of the concrete was pulling
They
it down to reach the bedrock?
Well, the pilings were already on the bedrock,
Oh,
but this was to guarantee that no wind could topple the bridge.
Okay, this held it there. and
Held it down on top of the bedrock. Yeah.
I see. Oh, okay.
Even, then they could dredge more out of the channel without threatening the stability of the bridge.
Chris, see that pile of this old piling in front of the wedge there? You got that right
Yeah.
on that thing. That was there, maybe, I don't know if it's still there or not. And on the other side of the bridge,
Yeah, same thing.
There were some. And were they just old pilings for an older version of the bridge, or?
No, this is intentional structure to deflect the ice as it comes through on the outgoing tide.
Okay, all right, yep.
They got pretty beat up, and I don't know if they're still there. I don't remember, but they had suffered great injury, so they would pull them out and put new ones in.
Okay, and now on the south side of the bridge, in other photographs, there's a couple of those, and of course the seagulls land on them and such.
Oh yeah.
But were those pilings, or they didn't have anything to do with the ice, did they, or did they?
Are you talking about these still?
Yeah, but there's some on the on other photographs on the south side. They're just like poles sitting in the water.
Well, yeah.
Go up, go forward a bit again.
See, this is before they did that.
Right.
Here they are.
There
Here.
they are. There they are right there. So you
Had
see
two
there's
sets
one,
of them.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that was just from ice from either direction then.
Yeah, they were having a lot of trouble with the ice. It had taken out several of the other types of bridges.
Okay. Okay.
Well, when you talk about the bridge, when you talked about the crank, I'll never forget what a thrill it was when I lived at the Red House in 64, 65 and on, that the sailboat would go and toot the horn, and I could run out the door, and I would run up and I would crank the one side of the bridge open just enough for the mast to go through. And believe me, it was a full-time job. And Bobby said, you want to be the harbor master, because hardly anyone lived at the Cove at the time, but it was really thrilling. So,
Good for
and
you,
also I have a
Marcia.
comment to make about the brush and needle. From my research that I did, Hamilton Easter Field used that building as a garage for the Island House.
Oh, really?
Really? They had
Yes,
to walk
and-
all the way over to
Because
the
it was
house.
very narrow road. Featherbed
Yeah.
Lane was very, very narrow then.
Mhm.
And also they had the field farms on Thursday evenings, and they would gather in that building and they would talk about art and literature and architecture and also gossip. So that's what I learned through all my research.
So Marcia, is that where the restaurant is now, or is it just where?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. that's
Billy.
So
the
there's that
restaurant.
down, remember this, there's a couple of steps down in Billy's. It goes out to the water. And when it was a dress shop, that was where they had the dresses. I used to work there.
I know.
So, but was it the lower part that maybe they used?
I have no idea, but I did find that out when I was doing my research for my
That's
documentary.
fascinating. I wonder if
Yeah.
Mimi Ireland knew that when she got it.
Well, that was a single car garage, wasn't it? It was on
no,
the.
It
It's a
was,
double.
and that's when you talked last week, Judith, about the doors opening up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was going to mention it then, but I thought, oh, well, that's because it was a garage. It was a small garage
Yes.
with probably an upstairs.
Yeah.
And then when you talked about the pilings, my father-in-law, Norman Brazier, bought a chicken coop from the Berwicks and placed it next to the ice house because he owned the whole strip from the ocean to the Cove.
Yeah.
And he bought it in 1949 for my husband. He started lobstering when he was 8, and they placed it there, and it's still on pilings today.
That's
And
right.
we keep saying Norman was so smart, because when it does flood, as you said, all the water goes underneath and then recedes out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
that's
so another
wonderful.
thing, I ran upstairs, and I know this is probably not in the program, and I'm going to get David's permission. I have this pastel that my mother-in-law had given me way back in the 60s, and it shows the bridge, and everyone that ever looked at it said, oh, was she using artistic license? That's not really how the bridge looked. But when I saw that photograph, Chris, that you showed, it's the exact same bridge.
Ah, good for her.
So this has been so exciting. And I brought it down from the bedroom, and of course it's got glare, but I don't know if David can
Yeah, hold on, Marcia.
put me on and
Sure.
put
So
it on.
Chris, can you
Lift it up.
stop sharing?
Yeah.
Yep, and we'll get Marcia to share, and let's
Oh.
make this bigger.
Ah,
As-
yes.
As soon as I can figure out how to make it bigger, let me see.
Oh,
Hey.
look at that bridge.
See, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Can you see the lady? Can you see the ladies?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Oh,
And,
that's a
and
wonderful.
there's the pilings.
Uh-huh.
But that's exactly the same bridge that in Chris's photograph.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
this is kind of a artistic license, all right.
All right.
Well,
let's-
it's similar, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
it's very spindly.
But there's a tuna boat in the picture, so
Oh,
but Henry Strader was quite a tuna fisherman. He tuna fished with Norman,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that was going on in the 30s.
mhm.
So
Who was
anyway,
the
I
artist?
couldn't. Oh yeah, her name is Crystal Stevens. Crystal Stevens,
Ah,
and she was quite popular in the 50s, or probably could have been the 40s. There's nothing on the back.
Oh, it's a great picture.
Wait,
So
hold it.
We're not seeing this.
Okay. What's going on is that anytime anybody speaks, the Zoom goes to whoever's speaking, and so I don't know how to. Marcia.
I'm all done.
Okay. All right. That was very nice. We got
Thank you, Marcia.
some
That
idea.
was great.
Maybe we can do an art show later on of paintings and drawings of the Cove through the years. Now let me see. Go back to Chris. Can you go back and share your screen again, Chris?
okay.
There. Why don't you go back through a ways?
That's a wonderful picture. Oh,
Now, stop there, Chris. Now, so that's Peter again. Is that Mrs. Is that India?
Yeah, that's my mother. That's our mother.
Okay. And up in the back is the Island House or the Adams House.
Right.
Now, was the Adams House just so remodeled beyond its simple Cape start that
Oh,
it
indeed.
became-
Yeah.
yeah.
Hamilton Easterfield did that for his mother.
Okay.
And then it got later on, it got rebuilt again in modern times, made even bigger.
Yes, I remember it was torn right down to the cellar hole, and we were all worried that what kind of monstrosity might be built there, and the fellow pretty much built it with the same look. So a lot of us local people were very pleased that they kept the original kind of look of the Island House.
I think he got tapped on the shoulder by the Historic Commission, and they said that has to look like it always did.
remember
I
Barbie
see.
was involved in that. Peter's wife was involved in the architectural control. Was that what it was called?
Yeah, she was.
And there was I stayed in that building in the 50s. I had a little bedroom off the kitchen on the very right.
Ah, yes, she was in the summer. Yeah, it wasn't the Laurence.
When the Laurents were there, and Paul
Yeah.
and Paul and Holly. Is it Holly? The
Holly
sister?
was the daughter.
Holly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Polly?
And Hal was the
Okay.
son.
Yes. And
Okay.
yes.
They
Still
were
at that-
both babies in high chairs when I was there.
Right. Hal was my age, and we used to run around and raise hell in the
Okay.
Cove as teenagers and when we were 14, 15 years old. 13, 14, 15. Along with the other two Laurent boys, Breon and Brett, which were John's sons. So,
And who was John's wife?
Nancy.
Oh, Nancy. Right.
now I'm a little confused with the perspective there of where, what are those buildings in the back and in which direction are we looking with that dredging?
Well, I think we're looking out the channel. On the island's on the right. It's all full of bushes, and
There's a house there.
I don't think the causeway had been put in yet.
Causeway.
go to make a road goes over to the island.
Oh.
In about northeast,
We're looking northeast?
yeah.
Yeah. Are you sure that photograph has not been reversed somehow?
Oh, no.
Okay, all right.
It's straight out of the
Oh.
album. You see the album page right in the back of it.
Okay.
Let me get, yeah. This is about where the steam shovel was working.
Okay.
But there are no houses in the background. There was a house.
Well, we're looking in a different direction now.
Oh,
But,
okay.
he started down the end of the channel and started digging it out as he went up. It was a kind of a unengineered effort to figure out that they just followed the channel and made it deeper
Ah,
to bring the low tide in further. If you know what I mean.
So this Woodbury Lane used to have another name, Cove Road.
Cove Road, yeah.
Now, how is that significant with the dredging?
Huh?
I mean, the fishermen use that road.
Oh, yeah. Well, originally it was called Cove Privilege
Oh, that's it.
because it was a special track, two tire tracks that they got them down here to their fish shacks, which were right next to where the studio went in. I don't have any pictures like
Because there
that.
wasn't any other way in.
Yeah. Well, there were almost as many fish shacks on this side as there were on the other side.
Oh. What did they do with their oars? Do they take them with them at night? Yeah, I guess so.
Well, they just left them in the punts.
Oh, there's two.
It's kind of a mess, but nobody bothered anybody else's boat.
And they just use rocks for anchors? Or no anchors?
Yeah,
Well,
no
there's
anchor.
an anchor. There's an anchor that Bobby gave to the Windhouse Museum,
Oh, yeah, that's a
and
good
it's a
thing.
very old anchor that was in the fish house that we lived in. And he had it for years, and then he finally decided, well, it's time to share it and to give it. And it's actually looks like a Windsor chair. And then it's got an old brick, and it's there at the Windhouse in front of the fish house exhibit.
Yeah.
And that was an anchor for one of the dories. They used anything they could get a hold of. A Windsor chair from the dining room and an old brick.
Called a kedge.
It's called a kedge?
Kedge, K-E-G.
Yes, that's the name of it.
oh,
Chris.
that's just a workaround for, is that what that means, Chris? Some kind
Yeah,
of,
I thought the more elaborate name, but that,
yeah. Now, a question for Marcia. You mentioned the chicken coop. Is that the little studio that you rent out every summer to artists?
Yes, George Carpenter was there for 22 years. And then another artist,
Yes.
oh dear,
I lost his name too.
I know her name. Anyway,
couple.
and then now Todd Bonita.
Yeah.
Oh, Beth Ellis. I'm sorry, Beth Ellis was
Okay.
there, and then Todd Bonita. And we've always rented that space to artists. We don't have any desire to rent to any other kind of provider, but an
Now-
artist.
Now, did you and Ann Boschman also have a little art store there?
Well, thank you for reminding me. In fact, Bobby used it for his fish house for years, and then Annie Boschman, the Annie Winkler Boschman, who lived at E.O. Perkins' place at the time, she's an artist, and she said, gee, I'd love to have a gallery. And I said, gee whiz, I'll help you. So she opened up A Wink and a Dream, and I would stay in the evening and sell her art, and that was the first actually artist that was in that building.
I'm not
But
sure
it
which
was a
building
chicken coop, and it was from the
Oh, in there.
Berwicks.
Oh,
Okay, and was it actually used as a chicken coop or just built as a chicken coop?
No, it was used as a chicken coop, and in those days, of course, people moved buildings very readily. And Norman had it carted down and placed it on those pilings, and of course cleaned it out. And then Bobby would put his gear in there. He started putting the gear in there when he was 8 years old.
And I remember Bobby, I had this memory of Bobby sitting on the short little flight of steps that go down from the door when I was living in the ice house. It was 1956 or 7 or 53 or 4. And he was sitting there whittling the pegs that go in the lobster.
Oh.
Lobster. And he was just a kid, his big feet and scrunched up on those little, he didn't really fit on the stairs.
That's so sweet. It's good to hear that. In fact, he gave the wooden pegs, thinking of that, he gave them to the Wynn House.
Oh, did he really?
Pegs. Because people don't realize that they used to use the wooden pegs. So they're so used to the rubber bands.
Mm.
Well,
really
those wooden pegs hurt the lobster, so you couldn't use them anymore.
Right.
The rubber bands aren't really good for much. They're
Well,
just-
don't ever cook your lobsters with those rubber bands on because it doesn't taste very good.
Oh, really?
Well, have we can do this again next week with another theme. I didn't really organize a program for this this fall. I just wanted to try to get this thing rolling again. Marcia and Judith started this Gabby Gatherings, and this is the Zoom version of it, and this is a pretty good turnout today. And now we have material for another YouTube video that I can post up on YouTube, and anybody can watch this, and we can see see if it's as popular as Richard Perkins, who's up to some 175 hits in a month.
He seems to be writing an ode every day.
So should we close this out? Do we have any final questions?
I'm not sure what you did decide on for next week.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll get on the phone after this, Judith,
Okay.
and we'll
right.
we can brainstorm.
Okay.
Okay, I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank the Woodbury family, Peter and Chris and Judith, because they're always such givers, and they've just enriched our lives so much by sharing. They're always sharing, and I just want to give them a tribute because I just think the world of them, and I appreciate everything, as I know everyone else does too.
But we appreciate Marcia for what she's done with the studio.
Yeah, you gotta let me counter that by saying we're grateful to Marcia for her keeping the studio so well and so valiantly.
Despite all odds.
Yeah.
And also, I want to say that for 15 years, David Ware was very much part of that.
Yes, he was. That's right.
Well, perhaps we could do something on the studio next week, or
wonderful.
sometime in the next 6 months or so, because I'm sure we could pull together enough photographs through the years and tie in some history of the art colony at the same time. But well, we'll see. After we stop recording, we perhaps can talk about it.
Well, one more thing about the exhibit that's at the museum right now. We just heard today that they want to extend it into next year. So we're going to be donating, and I guess Peter will agree. We have to agree to donate. We have to agree to this because we're without a lot of things, but we can manage. We have for almost a year now items that are in the show. So it's going to come back again. It's not going away.
Well, I got an idea. There's Margaret Weeks. While we're talking about Margaret, are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, I want to say that we appreciate you for keeping the Howard Adams house as it always
Exactly
was,
right.
rather than tear it down and rebuilding it.
I'm trying, Chris.
That's good.
It's always another surprise, like Marcia would say about the Woodbury house too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm cleaning out the yard right now.
In the house.
I have a
Hey, Peter, you want to jump in there?
yeah, one final word. I was out on Route 1 this morning, and a note to all you quilters, the store out there, Knight's the quilting store is closing up,
Um,
having a big sale. So I think you ought to go over there and see if you can find some material and stuff.
Thank you for the tip, Peter. I'll do that.
It's a quilting store.
Yeah, there were hundreds of cars there when I went by.
Yeah, yes.
So it's all gone by now.
There must be not much left inside.
Well, thank you for all attending, and I'll try to get this thing up on the web and up on the algonquit library.com under programs, and we'll see see how it goes.
Good.
So we'll see. I hope to see all of you next week, and if you have any ideas of what we can do for a presentation on these Gabby gatherings via Zoom, give me a call at the library or send me an email at info@algonquitlibrary.com, and let's put together a presentation. Any of you can jump in and offer to do that. I welcome it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
you
you,
very much
David.
for
Thank
attending.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Okay, Chris, can you stop sharing? And there we go.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi,
everyone.
Marcia.
Thanks for listening.
I loved every minute. It was so interesting. Thank you.
And you're
Yeah.
such a source of memory. Wow. You and David.
We'll see you next
Well,
time.
thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
She knows
Bye.
all the names.
Aloha.
Thanks for
Let's see.